Big ruling was just issued in the Georgia election interference case. We will unpack that. We've all been operating under the assumption that Biden's age was going to be a huge problem in this campaign. But what if it turns out it's just an annoying thing we all get used to? His State of the Union performance was meant to make us rethink the age issue. Did it work? We had never heard of Katie Britt a week ago, and now she's been satirized by a Marvel superhero on Saturday Night Live. Why do these responses almost never go well? There's a lot of chest thumping aimed at TikTok right now. You may not be following this, but it's low-key one of the biggest issues in this campaign, and the politics of it are unpredictable. We're going to try and break it down for you. Democrats had a chance to go after special counsel Robert Hur's comments about Biden's memory, and instead, they mostly played clips of Donald Trump. Was this the smart way to proceed? And with Huntergate going the way of a Russian agent named Smirnov and Biden coming out like a young 81 in his State of the Union, what's the new line of attack on Biden unveiled in these hearings, and how can you rebut it while playing America the home game? Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress in every election and want to convince their conservative friends and family members to join a majority. This is Majority 54. Ravi, we should probably start with this Georgia case, which this just happened. I will tell you what I read.
Yeah, should we play the Trump legal sound?
Oh yeah. Let's get the legal.
On this. Oh, there it is.
Oh, nice.
Okay. I was worried. I was worried we wouldn't be able to do it.
Here we go. All right. Good job. Okay, so
this he dismissed, from what I understand, this is the headline, and you explain this because I haven't. This just came out. It says the judge dismissed 6 counts of the 41-count criminal racketeering indictment. How significant is it?
And I just skimmed it, and basically what it looks like he did is he dismissed these 6 counts that were related to like the phone call to Raffensperger, a call that Trump made to the Speaker of the House in Georgia, a couple other calls. These efforts to get them to quote unquote find votes, the effort to say, why don't we, figure out how this is okay to do, all that stuff. And these indictments, this portion of the indictment was basically saying that they were trying to incite or urge people to violate their oaths. And so what the judge has said is that there are all sorts of different ways in which these actions could violate the Constitution, could violate their oaths, could violate statutes, but that the prosecution hasn't been specific enough in saying how they violated those laws, and really more specifically what they violated. And so as a result, what he said is that it lacks specificity. And so he is, for now, thrown out those indictments. Now, of course, the prosecution could choose to appeal and say, no, we actually think that it should be in there. They could also choose to bring those charges again and create more specificity. But what the judge is saying is not that they haven't created it, they haven't given enough specificity for it to qualify as a violation of the law, but more specifically what he's saying is that it lacks the amount of detail necessary for the defense to actually respond to it in a specific way. My guess is that they're just going to move forward because the whole RICO case, racketeering case, is still intact. And so it seems to me they'll just drive forward with this.
Yeah, and you might not know this given how quick we had to dive into this, but what is the remaining case in Georgia based on?
It's basically an organized crime case, right? I mean, it's, everything from the fake electors to all of the stuff that they were trying to, that's why you have so many defendants. Giuliani has 10 indictments. Trump now has 10. I think Trump had more than Giuliani now, they're even because of this. And it's basically just an organized crime case. And so, man, I don't know. It's so hard to keep track of all these, but yeah. What I think will happen is Trump is going to take the part about the phone call and say, look, they threw out the charges. I'm exonerated, because that's what he does anytime a judge coughs in a direction that seems even remotely favorable to him. So we can expect that for sure.
Yeah, it's obviously a bummer that the phone call isn't something that the law has something to say about, because it seems like such a blatantly criminal act. But
yeah, and maybe they'll still bring that charge and they'll just do more pleading on it. I don't know. We'll see. But my guess is they're going to want to keep driving ahead.
Yeah, I could imagine. And we should expect any day now a ruling on Willis herself from the same judge.
today or into this week, I think. And I think most people expect that they're not going to actually throw her off of it because she performed very well in her testimony and really kind of cut the legs out from under this.
All right, well, let's go to the State of the Union address. I think this is quite the moment. Biden, by all accounts, or by most accounts, did extremely well. Did you have a chance to see it?
Here's what I did. I got to see clips of it later. I was actually at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City.
Oh, I saw that
baseball.
panel. Yeah, with Poznanski and some of the other people.
And Alex Gordon, who played, is a world champion. It was real fun. And Bob Kendrick from the museum. So I was doing that, and then what I did, because I wanted to, I wasn't gonna have time to watch the whole thing, but I wanted to understand how it played. So what I didn't do is I didn't open up Twitter or Instagram or anything else or TikTok to try and figure out how people reacted. What I did is I texted my dad. My dad was going to go to the event that I was doing at the museum, but he was like, you know what? I've watched every State of the Union live since Nixon. And so that's what I'm going to do. And my dad is, he's very much a Democrat, but he's also a 70-year-old Democrat from Kansas City. So it's not like he's a conservative Democrat, but he's just sort of a very mainstream Democrat. And he has good instincts about this kind of thing. So I knew like I wouldn't get like an overreaction of like, oh, everything was amazing. Biden fixed everything as far as the concerns, but I also wouldn't get that online like, oh, he made this one flub. So I felt like it was a good, and Dad's not like particularly on Twitter. He's not all that online. So I was like, how'd it go? And he said he was really aggressive and energetic. And it went actually really, really well. And then my dad was like, I was very relieved. So that's the read I got. And then when I went to watch the clips, that's what I got from it.
Really important performance for him, because there's not many of these sort of collective experiences left, even though we're just at the beginning of the campaign season. Mm-hmm. There's not even a guarantee that we'll get the debates. So this was such a huge moment for him.
Yeah, I felt, from what I watched, I felt like not only did it go well in terms of literally just an endurance test, right? I mean, you get, just going into the chamber is a lot of energy that comes up with it. And then you get, I mean, there's so many different things, right? But then on top of that, on top of standing on your feet and delivering this really enthusiastic speech for an hour plus, he had, it seemed to me, a lot more back and forth with the crowd than has been typical of these speeches. It almost reminded me of like British Parliament and Question Time. And he seemed really on his toes.
Yeah, he even called out the Supreme Court, which back when people used to talk about norms and stuff would have been a bigger deal. I remember when Biden did something, I mean, Obama did something involving Alito. I can't even remember what it was. It was just where Alito was shaking his head, something about the court. I don't even remember, but it was such a big deal. This time, people just kind of went past it.
Yeah, he directly addressed the justices too, and it's like whatever. He takes more than that to get our attention now.
But also, they deserve it. Like a bunch of these people went up in front of Congress and lied about their positions on Roe versus Wade, and then overturned it. So they did. They're politicians just like everybody else. So I thought this was great, and Jon Stewart had a really funny reaction because he, like me, has been a bit hard on Biden, and he kind of had this whole refrain about how the doubters were proven wrong. And then he pulled up a mirror and addressed the doubters. And he was talking to himself. It was a really funny moment. And I think I just think this was great. And we spoke about this, I think it was either last week or the week before, that the one thing we could benefit from is the low expectations and the short attention spans of the American public. And this is the benefit of that. The expectations for Biden are so low right now.
Yeah.
This is a little bit about what George W. Bush benefited from, right?
Yeah.
When he debated, people were like sky high expectations of Gore, who was like Mr. Debate Champion, and Kerry of the same thing. And everybody's like, oh, George W. Bush is so stupid. And then when he showed up speaking in complete sentences and, halfway okay, people were like, okay, this is great. Now, I do think Biden was better than just speaking in complete sentences. I thought it was actually a quite good speech. And yeah, I just have very positive reviews.
I think it clearly rattled Trump. Like when you get the video where Trump, the next day makes fun of Joe Biden's stutter, that's a guy who's like freaked out that maybe the age criticism is not playing as well. Maybe that Biden is not. Look, I think people on the right who had just seen Fox News talk about how Joe Biden is decrepit and senile. I think they just thought he was going to come up there and he was going to be a literal skeleton that couldn't talk. And so when that's not what happened, Trump and others freaked out. And so then Trump's like, well, I'm going to start making fun of his stutter, which I don't think is going to look. I'm sure his base will love it, but I don't think that's going to play well.
But there's only so many clips of Biden stuttering or not making sense that you can string together before the public is like, okay, I now understand that line of argument. And there aren't many of these collective moments. And as long as Biden keeps showing up well in the collective moments, we're okay. It gives him the opportunity to make his case. Now, then he's got to make it. And Trump's got to keep handing him some unforced errors, which we'll get to. Now, on the other hand,
hold on. What I'd say about that is that Biden's stutter / tendency to make gaffes and all that stuff is to it's like that is the Biden version of Trump's corruption and coarseness, right? So like it's all baked in at this point. Like we get it. Trump is a self-dealer who is mean. Well, you're not going to really convince any new people in this election by pointing that out, because anybody who's still leaning Trump is leaning Trump or voting Trump, knowing those two things or having at least been confronted with those things. And the same is true with Biden. People understand the guy makes verbal gaffes and that sort of thing, but he's been like that forever. So it's, that's why I don't think it's going to serve Trump well to make fun of him.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so early to be rolling out, to be bringing out your queen, to use a chess analogy, this early. It's like at a certain point, you have to make other arguments. And this is probably their most powerful argument to have. Now, the GOP made the, I would say puzzling decision to roll out this senator I'd never heard of, actually. And I think it's safe to say that Alabama probably has the two least impressive senators in the entire union.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
But this woman, Katie Britz, gave their response, which got a lot of attention, Jason. Let's see if we have a clip from this.
The true, unvarnished state of our union begins and ends with this. Our families are hurting. Our country can do better.
So, okay. You've heard me, and the audience has heard me talk about this before, but don't try to act, politicians. This goes for literally anyone who intends to get up in front of more than 3 people at a time. Okay. If you are not an actor, don't do it. Don't try to do it, because in America, especially now, when we have so much content, so much quality content, like, I don't know about you, the remote for my television now has buttons for specific streaming services. Like, it's got a button for Netflix, a button for Disney Plus, a button for whatever. So like, there's so much content that is scripted, good content, that when we see people act, we see people do it very well. We only see the top 1% of actors act. So if you're a politician, then you are at best, because you did not choose this vocation, you are at best.
Unless you're Fred Thompson or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Even it didn't work when he would do it. And even Arnold, it didn't work when they would do it, because you were like, this feels like a line, So you're at best top 50% of actors in the country if you're a politician. At best, maybe 25%. Maybe you did some theater in college. Don't do it, because when we see bad acting, our brains do not recognize it as bad acting. Our brains just go, this is making me feel terribly uncomfortable and I don't like it.
Yeah. I mentioned Stewart before. We can't play the clip because of copyright for the video, but he was really funny on this. And it just made me realize how much I appreciate him back in American life. And I'm hoping they'll expand these Mondays that they do to 5 days a week, because he's been on fire.
So are we going to move on? Because I have a question about responses. I have thoughts on this, but these seem to go so poorly all the time, right?
Yeah.
Either party.
That's a call you should never return, in my opinion. Like, if you're a politician.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, but there are a few people who it's worked for. Joe Kennedy did one where people were like, that was pretty good. Stacey Abrams did one. People were like, that was pretty good. There's a
You just
couple
named two unemployed politicians.
Well, okay, but
it's like, who do we know?
But they got
Rubio,
good bounces out of doing the response, right?
Yeah.
And so they're not unemployed. They're just doing other things.
I like them both. There's no dig at them. I mean, they're no longer politicians, is my point.
Yeah, but but they both ran for stuff. That's why.
Yeah,
and so anyway, okay. So I've been thinking about this for a while because there was a period, brief, but there was a period in my life where I might have gotten that call. And I remember thinking how I would do this. And this is what I think. This is what I would do. First of all, I wouldn't have a script. I wouldn't have any prepared lines. I would have, themes that I knew I wanted to hit. But then what I would do is, now this is crazy, I would watch the speech. And then I would issue a rebuttal to the speech. Like, how hard is this? Like, it's supposed to be a response. But the reason people do so poorly is it's not a response. It's just another speech. So what I would do if it were me is I would have a piece of paper and I would take notes during the speech. And then when it was my turn, I would come on and I would just be like, I'm your friend who sat with you in your room where you were watching, and I would turn to you and I'd be sitting on a couch and be like, all right, I watched the speech. I have some thoughts. And then I would say, here are my notes. And then I would tell you what I thought of what the person said and why they were wrong. Like, I think that would actually have a good chance to do okay unless you suck at doing that.
Yeah. I mean, well, speaking of the Republican response, Mike Johnson was in the background and I thought was notably smug in a way. And now my views have solidified on this gentleman. I don't like him very much. He's got just the biggest shit-eating grin I think we've seen in politics in a while. But moving on, Trump and Biden both wrapped up the nominations. I don't think there's much to talk about here, but we are officially in this phase. Trump also waded into some dangerous territory for him, talking about entitlement cuts. Let's go to this clip from CNBC.
Stark policy differences, obviously, Mr. President, but one thing that I think that at least the perception is that there's not a whole lot of difference between what you think we should do with entitlements or non-discretionary spending and what President Biden is proposing. It's almost the third rail of politics. And we've got a $34 trillion total debt built up, and very little we can do in terms of cutting spending. Discretionary is not going to help. Have you changed your outlook on how to handle entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Mr. President? It seems like something has to be done, or else we're going to be stuck at 120% of debt to GDP forever.
So first of all, there is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amounts of things and numbers of things you can do. So I don't, necessarily agree with the statement.
Yeah, so Trump has been calling into CNBC a lot, which we'll see in another clip later on. It's really odd. It's an odd venue for him to be obsessed with, but I guess he's bored.
Well, he loves calling in because when you call in, you can just have your notes in front of you and you can just read stuff.
Yeah, you don't have to do all the extensive preparations. These are usually in the morning. And so he doesn't have to do whatever kind of crazy preparation he needs to do to be, to look like Trump. But Biden pounced on this. Let's go to this clip from the president.
Many of my Republican friends want to put Social Security and Medicare back on the chopping block again. If anyone tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise the retirement age again, I will stop them. Working people built this country. They pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. Folks, we have two ways to go at Social Security and Medicare. Republicans will cut Social Security and Medicare to give us more tax cuts for the wealthy. Even this morning, Donald Trump said cuts to Social Security and Medicare are on the table again.
Yeah. So here's the thing about this. One, it's very effective as a line of attack from Biden. Two, the reason it's so effective is because everybody knows the Republicans would love to cut those programs. Like,
Yeah, it's in their plan. This Project 2025, which the Heritage Foundation put out, essentially saying like this is. They put like basically the right wing all came together, all the different think tanks and everything. There's like 100 think tanks in this thing, and they all came together and said, well, what would the presidency, the country look like in 2025 if we took power?
Yeah.
And these things are in there.
It's also like at the heart of what it is to be a Republican. I mean, like they're literally called entitlements. They're welfare programs. Is it a mystery that they hate them? Like it's not. So, let's turn to the, like the Republican subconscious, which is Ben Shapiro, who will tell us what he thinks about this.
No one in the United States should be retiring at 65 years old. Frankly, I think retirement itself is a stupid idea unless you have some sort of health problem. Everybody that I know who is elderly, who has retired, is dead within 5 years.
Is that an AI Ben Shapiro? That was the real Ben Shapiro.
That's real Ben Shapiro.
Oh
So,
my God. What's going on with him? He doesn't look real. Could we just do a freeze frame of that really quickly? I don't like to talk about people's appearances, but there's something weird going on here.
I think Ben Shapiro has been lingering in the, the Just for Men.
I think he's getting his eyebrows
a little
waxed.
longer.
He's got his eyebrows waxed. It seems. I don't, allegedly. I don't know. I don't want his lawyers coming after me. But he's also got the stubble. He's trying to do the JD Vance, I'm like a real man kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like his actual speed of which he talks, which continues. And I've been accused of being a fast talker before, but he's like the Micro Machines guy.
Well, but what he said there, that's the heart. Is that not that when you hear that, that's the stuff that your Republican friends say to you when like there's nobody around to judge them. They say retirement is stupid. Why would anybody, if you don't have a health problem, why would you retire? Now, not all Republicans, but young Republicans say that kind of thing. Now, they get older and then they want to retire, but younger Republicans, that's definitely what they believe. And so, I mean, like his statement, I don't know anyone who's ever retired and not died within 5 years. Like, really? That's okay.
I mean, like many things, there's a nuanced discussion to be had about whether retirement's good for people or not. Like I have some people in my life who retired and had to unretire because they wanted purpose and all that. Politically, it's a dumb thing to say.
Yeah.
It's like a kitchen table conversation you could have about it, but politically, it's not going to fly.
When this comes up with other people and you're talking about, don't talk about it like you're on television. Don't say like, well, he said he wants to cut in time. Just be like, look, man. Republicans want low taxes and they want low spending on social service programs. The biggest social service programs we have are Medicare and Social Security. Do you really think that they don't want to cut those? Like, obviously they do. That's what their whole party is founded. Who do you think was opposed to that stuff when it was passed in the first place? Like, right. It's clearly the case. Like, whether Trump says it or not, which he did, and he will again, he'll make that mistake again. By the way, he'll make that mistake because he'll do what he did in that CNBC interview, which is when an interviewer makes a statement emphatically, Trump often makes the mistake of wanting to please the interviewer.
Yes.
And so that's what he did. It's going to happen again, but you don't need it. It's so obvious. It's like everything they stand for is like rich people will get everything done, and working and working and working until you die is what gives you value. That's their whole concept.
Well, quickly, we should talk about some sort of less significant news in the 2024 landscape. RFK Jr., I know everybody's anxiously awaiting.
This could be significant.
Well, okay, yeah, I agree. If it turns out the way I hope it does, which he says he's imminent on picking a running mate, and number one on his list, Jason, I'm sure you know. Who is it?
Aaron Rodgers, baby.
Which, as a huge supporter of my Buffalo Bills and somebody who doesn't want the Jets competing in the AFC, he's great. Like, have him be as distracting as possible, which he'll do anyway, no matter what. But I do agree that Rodgers would be interesting for us because he will bring in more MAGA people to RFK Jr., the anti-vaxxers. He also could be significant in the state of Wisconsin in a way that could cause Trump some trouble. I don't think he would accept, but I don't know. He's so egotistical, you never know.
They've been having an active conversation about this. And look, I think he might accept because I think Aaron Rodgers, look, I think Aaron Rodgers is a little bit done with playing football. That's what I think. I think coming back from an injury like the one he's on, I think it's really hard. He's 40 years old, and he seems to really enjoy all this other stuff. I'm not saying, well, he is distracted by it, but I think like he's 40 and he's been playing football a long time, and now he's on the Jets. Like, come on. Does becoming a nominee for vice president sound like more fun than that? Yeah, it does. But I was interested in this list. So this list of people that he's apparently been talking to, you got Aaron Rodgers, Jesse Ventura, Rand Paul, Tulsi Gabbard. I was thinking about who has been snubbed from this list. And I think Joe Rogan, probably there was a reach out, but Joe Rogan's like, dude, I got a good deal going. I got no
Dr.
interest in
Phil?
that.
Where's
Dr. Phil? And also, here's one that obvious snub, Dr. Drew. Where is Dr. Drew?
Okay, I didn't know Dr. Drew was it loony. Is he?
Yeah, he's a little bit. What about Adam Carolla? Why is Adam Carolla not on this list?
Wait,
What
I didn't
happened
know
to him?
those guys were bad.
Yeah, where's Dennis Miller or Rob Schneider? Like, where are those guys on this list? Like, this is very insulting to those people. Or what's her name? The lady from Saturday Night Live who is gone. Where's Roseanne? Like, this is insulting that she's not on the list. But anyway, I think if you put some of those people, particularly Aaron Rodgers, on there, I do think it makes it more likely. And frankly, I think it's more likely at this point anyway that RFK Jr. does pull some people from Trump, because initially it was like, okay, he's a Kennedy, but he's anti-vax. And so I think the thinking was, well, that's going to pull from Biden. But I just feel like the vaccination politics are so far behind us, at least on the left, that I think it's much more like that's much more resonant on the right.
Yeah. I just hope it's Rodgers. I really do. It would be great for the football season. It would be like the evil step twin of the Taylor Swift phenomenon that happened this past season. It would be like this really crazy distraction.
And then you're going to have Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift out there for Biden. It's going to be hilarious.
Unbelievable. Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this TikTok ban that just passed the House of Representatives. And then we're going to talk about this Robert Hur testimony and what Democrats should and should not be doing on that question. All this and more when we come back. I've tried so many different things to maintain a heart-healthy lifestyle, whether it's diets or workouts, etc. And don't get me wrong, there is a place for those things. But sometimes the changes that we make are so big and unsustainable that we miss some of the easy wins. And with Super Beets Heart Chews, you can get daily blood pressure support in just 2 tasty chews a day, and they even promote heart-healthy energy without the stimulants. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. I have these in my apartment, and I like to chew on them in the middle of the day. It kind of gives me like a little extra boost of energy without the coffee. And heart health is important for me because I want to be around for as long as possible. Super Beets Heart Chews give me the peace of mind that I'm doing the right thing and doing something good for my health every single day. I take them in the afternoon, sometimes also after work, and I can't recommend them enough for you, our listeners. So double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a month free of supply of Super Beets Heart Chews on all bundles and a free full-size bag of turmeric chews valued at $25 with your order by going to majority54beats.com. That's majority54beats.com.
Sleep is incredibly important in my household, which is why I love my Helix mattress so much. Now, here's the order. It's like my family, Diana, True, Bella. And then right under that, the dog. No, the dog is after. The dog is after my mattress. So, like in terms of what I'm on the road right now, what I'm looking forward to when I get home, I want to see my family, and then I want to sleep on my mattress that I love, and then I would like to see my dog. Now I'm gonna see my dog before the mattress, but you get my point. And that's because, I'm a guy who I used to be such a pro at sleeping on any surface. I was a soldier. I prided myself on that. I could sleep anywhere. But now I'm totally spoiled, man. I dread this hotel bed that I'm looking at over here because I just miss my mattress. It just knows exactly what to do with my spine. It's perfect. So with everything going on in life, from work to a demanding social schedule to sports and kids sports, it's incredibly important to me and probably to you that you're getting a good night's sleep every single night. So you should take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes. I took the Helix Sleep Quiz. I was matched with a Midnight Luxe mattress because I wanted something that felt like medium to firm, and I sleep on my side. So it really helped me get exactly where I needed to be. Don't take my word for it. Helix Sleep has over 12,000 5-star reviews. So by supporting Helix, you're allowing them to support this show. Go purchase your Helix and thank us later for your best night's sleep. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/majority54. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
Big news this week. Earlier today, the House of Representatives passed a bill 352-65 that will force the parent company of TikTok to either sell the service within 6 months or be banned outright within the United States. It's being called a TikTok ban. I don't think that will be the result here. I think that if this passes the Senate, where it definitely has an uncertain path, certain people like Rand Paul say they will not vote for this. And then certain people like Lindsey Graham are non-committal. Schumer is non-committal. But if this did pass, it would be a big deal, but I don't think it signals the end of TikTok. I think they would just offload this platform to a different American-based company.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, should we take a whole bucket of money or should we not? Like, clearly, you're going to take the bucket of money. But it's interesting to me, the politics of this, because this feels very much like one of those issues where it's not breaking down around partisan lines, because it's one of those things where it's so new. People are like, I don't understand what to do here, right? Because you've got Biden is saying, look, I'll sign it if it gets to me. Schumer, who we talked about Schumer last week, he is a political animal at the highest level. So Schumer is always trying to figure out what will this mean politically for the party. And I think the reason he's non-committal is because he's not sure. And then you've got Trump, who was talking smack about TikTok during the primary and for years as a way to look tough on China, who's now like, nah, I don't think I'm for it. Right.
Yeah, let's go to that clip. And yet another CNBC clip, by the way. Let's go to this clip.
But do you believe that TikTok is a national security threat or not? Because if it is, and I believe that the emergency powers order that you had put in place at the time suggested that it was that not true?
I do believe that. I do believe it. And we have to very much go into privacy and make sure that we are protecting the American people's privacy and data rights. And I agree. But, we also have that problem you have that problem with Facebook and lots of other companies, too. I mean, they get the information, they get plenty of information, and they deal with China, and they'll do whatever China wants. If you look at some of our American companies, when you talk about highly sophisticated companies that you think are American, they're not so American. They deal in China, and China, if China wants anything from them, they will give it. So that's a national security risk also. But when I look at it, I'm not looking to make Facebook double the size. And if you ban TikTok, Facebook and others, but mostly Facebook will be a big beneficiary. And I think Facebook has been very dishonest. I think Facebook has been very bad for our country, especially when it comes to elections.
Can I just say, Robbie, that the part of that clip that's funny to me is you can hear the moment that what's written down on the piece of paper in front of him stops working. And it's after the words privacy and data rights. And then he just falls off a cliff.
Well, it's amazing to me that this is the guy who got reportedly $7+ million from the Chinese government during his time in government as president. And when they were, basically bribing him in plain sight by staying in his properties. But he did it about face. And what's interesting is question, at least his about face isn't as aggressive as the immigration one. He's not asking his people not to vote for this, because if he did, this wouldn't have passed the House because he gets what he wants.
This is the luxury of not being in an office and not actually being required to take a position. He doesn't have to take a position. He didn't have to take a position on the immigration bill, really. So here's what I see him doing here. 3 things. One, I think he wants to carry favor with China for the reasons you brought up, that for his business reasons, it's always been valuable, but also because he'd love to see China do what Russia did or attempted to do last time around. He's always looking for that sort of edge for somebody to help him in the election. Second, I think he'd like to carry favor with people who are on TikTok, who he imagines, I think this is Generation Z. This is how he sort of triangulates and pulls a move to get young people on board, which, is not a crazy idea, that if Biden looks to be against TikTok and Trump looks to be for TikTok, he might, shave off some expected Biden voters or get them to stay home. And then third is just that he's not in a primary anymore. We've just talked about it. If he were still in a primary, he would have to take absolutely every opportunity to be anti-China, but he doesn't have to do that now because he's in a general election.
I'm just Googling right now. Does Trump still get intelligence briefings? But I guess Biden banned him. I was going to say, which just makes sense.
Yeah.
Although it recently said that he's about to start getting them again. Okay. Well, okay. So my theory here was that he's starting to get these intelligence briefings that are telling him that China's, actively planning to, subvert our election, but it's unclear exactly where. And with Biden, who said he would sign this if it came to his desk, and he's done other sort of tough on China things. Trump, he knows what it's like to receive the benefit of foreign government interventions on his behalf, and probably is like, oh, sure, wouldn't be a bad thing if I gave China something to root for here for me, even though I've been hard on them. Who the hell knows? But either way, it's not consistent. It's not coherent. And I think a lot of people are left wondering what the hell his position is. I happen to think that this is actually the right thing to do. The TikTok is 170 million American users, and it has been demonstrated time and again that they've used their algorithm to suppress messages that the Chinese government doesn't like, whether it has to do with Hong Kong or Tiananmen Square or the Uyghurs in Western China. That has been established. Their executives have also gone in front of Congress and have been slippery when asked about who controls what data. And I think it's not a close call in a case where there's an app that has such significance in the lives of all Americans, but especially young Americans, that you'd want that in the hands of a company based in the United States. And these aren't perfect companies. And, they do have issues, and they have bowed to pressure from foreign governments before, but at least they're not as squarely within the Chinese National Security Acts as the parent company for TikTok would be.
Yeah, I agree. Look, at least put a lock on your back door. Don't just leave it open and let people walk in, you know, and it's not, you're right. It's not going to result in a ban. It's going to result in a transfer of ownership. And is that, you're right. It's not going to make it all okay, but you're a fool if you just say, hey, this thing that seems to be setting the opinions of a lot of young Americans, let's just let it be owned by one of our greatest foreign adversaries.
Yeah, they don't even China doesn't even let this service exist in their country. They have a different version of TikTok that's way more gated for kids. So they don't even allow it to happen. Okay, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this Robert Hur testimony, which had turned some heads on the Hill yesterday. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If I had just one more hour in my day, I'd spend it with the ones I love most. And a lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. And therapy can help you find what matters so that you could do more of it. So many people I know have benefited from therapy, and it's helped them learn positive coping skills and set boundaries. Therapy has empowered so many people I know to be the best versions of themselves, including people I know who've experienced major trauma in their life, but also people who haven't. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/M54 today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/M54. So let's face it, after a night of drinks, I don't bounce back the way I used to. And if you're as old as I am or more, you know what I'm talking about. And sometimes you have to make a choice. Either you have a great night or you have a great next day. And I've been facing that choice until I found ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD students to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break that byproduct down. And just remember, you can make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, and then you could drink responsibly and you could feel your best the next day. It's amazing. I wish they had this when I was in college. So I first gave ZBiotics a try when I was bringing in the new year, and I drank probably a little bit more than I should have. And the next day I felt great. I went out for a surf, and this is how it's going to be, right? This year, I want to form more sustainable and better drinking habits. I know so many of you want to do the same. And you don't have to take the all or nothing approach anymore. ZBiotics will allow you to enjoy nights out in moderation while working towards your goals. So go to zbiotics.com/majority54 to get 15% off your first order when you use majority54 at checkout. That's ZBiotics. And they're backed with 100% money back guarantees. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. So remember to head to zbiotics.com/majority54 and use the code majority54 at checkout for 15% off. And thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and for the good times. All right. So, Robert Hur, who's the special counsel who declined to prosecute Joe Biden on the documents that Biden retained, but who also issued a report that Democrats took issue with that seemed to cast some Biden in a negative light due to his age and his memory and all that. He went to the Hill for testimony, and I think a lot of people had mixed feelings about what to do here. I would say my biggest concern was avoiding the Streisand effect. Like, you know what that means, the Streisand effect?
No, huh?
So Streisand, this could be apocryphal, but apparently they, back in the day, paparazzi published a photo of Streisand's house, and she went after them and made a big deal out of it. And apparently it only increased significantly the eyes on the house. Right. So they call it the Streisand effect now, saying,
don't draw
essentially
attention.
here. Yeah. Why draw attention to it? And I feel this way about this Hur report. I think it came and went. I think Biden going and doing that late night, that evening press conference was a mistake, especially since he flubbed some things, and that became the story. And he also looked defensive. I think if they would have just let it come and go, yes, it wasn't net helpful, but I'm not sure it would have gotten the attention it's gotten now. And the big thing is that Biden didn't get indicted, which is really important on the documents. So I was worried about this hearing. I think Democrats generally handled it okay. They did press her on a couple of different things, but in the end, I don't think this became the spectacle I was worried about.
Yeah, well, what I found interesting is that two things. One, they a lot of them took the approach of, let's just play a bunch of clips of Trump. Let's just talk about Trump. I mean, there seems to be an acceptance by establishment Democrats, starting with Biden, if you look at his State of the Union address, with the idea of we're not going to be wed to these norms anymore. This is an election year, and we're not going to act like this is a regular hearing that's not about the campaign. We're just going to talk about Trump. If you look at Biden's State of the Union, I mean, it was a lot like a rally speech. He just kept comparing himself to the former president, right? Who's also his opponent. And he was not shy about it. He didn't come up with pretenses to do it. And so in this hearing, they were like, all right, we're going to talk about memory. We're going to talk about fitness for the job. Let's just show a bunch of clips of Trump and kind of ignore Robert Hur, which I think is smart. Let's talk about what we're talking about, is one. Two, I think we found out what the, at least for the moment, new line of attack from the Republicans are, which I feel free to talk about this book deal thing.
Yeah. Okay. On the top level, they kept trying to push her to state that the elements of a crime had been established, but that he declined to prosecute, and he had to keep interjecting, saying that is not true. What they also did was have this sort of elaborate. I mean, anytime money's involved, people are like millions of dollars, like Dr. Evil style, right? It's like Jim Jordan, among others, had these sort of long refrains about here's Joe Biden's book advance, and the reason why he conspired to hold on to all these documents is because it was advantageous to him. It would help him make money, as if these documents were necessary for that. Let's go to one of these clips.
This is a quote. Joe Biden risked serious damage to America's national security when he shared information with his ghostwriter. Shared it with his ghostwriter, the guy who was helping Joe Biden get $8 million. And oh, by the way, Mr. Herr, what did that ghostwriter do with the information Joe Biden shared with him on his laptop? What did he do after you were named special counsel?
Chairman, if you're referring to the audio recordings that Mr. Zwanitzer created of his conversations with
exactly what I'm referring to.
He slid, if I remember correctly, he slid those files into his recycle bin on his computer.
Tried to destroy the evidence, didn't he?
Correct.
The very guy who was helping Joe Biden get the $8 million, Joe Biden had used the motive for Joe Biden to disclose classified information, to retain classified information, which he definitely knew was against the law. When you get named special counsel, what's that guy do? He destroys the evidence. That's the key takeaway in my mind. That's the key takeaway.
Look, I'll be honest. I feel like the way that they've set it up, they're creating a pretty effective strategy for trying to muddy the waters with the Trump case. I mean, but there are ways you could argue back against that. I mean, for instance, look, by the time that he's working on the book, he already has the advance. He didn't get the advance because he had classified documents. He got the advance because he was vice president of the United flipping States and he was going to write a book about it. And so they gave him an advance because that's the publisher going, we think we'll make this much money off your book. I can't imagine they did, but that's what they thought. And, so the idea that he did it for money is silly. If you want to make the argument that he did it to try and, put the correct details in the book, that's a fair argument, I guess.
Yeah, I can't imagine this being that big of a deal, but
No.
The Republicans, like Benghazi is a good example. It took down my former boss, Susan Rice's chances of being Secretary of State. Like, you just sit on something long enough. They have such a hold on, a certain percentage of the American population that whatever they decide, as spurious as it is, can do some damage. I'm not convinced this is going to be the thing that makes a difference,
No.
And
But
or you say, no, I was just gonna say her, he doesn't do everything the way I'd want him to. I understand why some Democrats hate him, but we should not be in the business of attacking independent counsels like this. Like, yes, there are things he did that are head turning, but in the end, he appears to be an independent servant of the Justice Department, and we should not be the people attacking those types of people, even if we disagree with them, in my opinion.
Robert Herr seemed to be more interested in being a lawyer than a Republican during that hearing.
Yes.
And which is all you can really ask from a Republican appointed to do Republican things as a special counsel. Now, did he put a really dumb and hurtful thing in his report? Yeah. But after the State of the Union, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to matter as much, or maybe it'll matter down the stretch, but this isn't going to be what they point to. Right.
Yep.
So I agree with you. But I do think, to your point, that what'll happen is that Jim Jordan and the likes of Jim Jordan will just say $8 million for the documents ad nauseum until that's all people remember. They won't even remember this book deal argument and all that kind of
thing. And there was some back and forth over whether Biden forgot about Bo's death. And what it turns out is that Biden named
the date.
He named the exact date. And then in a back and forth, the lawyers for the Justice Department mentioned the year. And my reading on it, and I don't think this matters at all, is that it would be as if you and I were like, remember when, the and I'm not using this because it's comparable. I'm just saying, like, this would be like in a conversation, we would be like, oh, do you remember like that Chiefs Bills game we went to? And I'll be like, yeah, I remember. It was, January, whatever.
To you,
And then,
it is comparable.
And you would, and then you would be like, yeah, and I would just be like, oh yeah, and you were like, oh, it was 2021.
Well,
and I'd be like, oh, 2021, that's what it was. And it's almost just like, it's just the way you talk. And that was kind of the way that people, like, it looked like Biden's back and forth. It was like, oh yeah, 2015. Yeah. Wow. It's been that long. And it's like, that's how it felt like he was talking.
It's commonly the case that I will remember the exact month and day of something and then struggle to figure out what the exact year was within, and including major events. Like, my dad had a major heart attack that nearly killed him. And just the other day, I know the exact month and day, but just the other day I was like, was that 2011 or 2010? And so, and it was a major day in my life, so I agree with you. But the point really here is that if we're getting into that sort of back and forth on this, we're already losing,
right?
Because this is a moment in time that's going to pass, and you just gotta trudge forward. And look, at the end of the day, there will be some people who are concerned about Biden's age, but for the most part, people are going to worry about, what this candidate or that candidate's going to do for or against them. And that's what's really going to matter here.
Yeah. All right.
All right. I have a quick grab an oar. I don't have the link, but I'll give it to Salty and Jeremy. We'll put it in the show notes. My friend David Mixner passed away this week. For people who don't know David, which is probably a lot, but there's a lot of who are aware of David. David was, this is how he referred to himself, because he's that kind of guy who's an amazing dude. He was like the MLK of the LGBT movement. Lived in New York, raised all sorts of money for LGBT causes, was one of the leading people in fighting against Don't Ask, Don't Tell to try and get it repealed, and just was an incredible dude. David passed away, and an organization that was very close to his heart that he did a lot of fundraising for and even put on his own shows for that I went to was the Ali Forney Center in New York. Anyway, there's a memorial fund that Diana and I gave to this morning. And so we'll put that in the show notes. I would encourage people not only to give, but maybe to learn more about David Mixner, who was quite a guy. But with that, what's going on in your life, Robbie?
Dude, it's been tough. My dad had, I don't know if I remember I mentioned this last week, but my dad had open heart surgery, emergency open heart surgery. And my grandma went to hospital a couple of days later for heart failure.
Oh my gosh.
Both are okay as of this moment, but it just was, just as I was coming back from my long trip. So that's been kind of dominating my life. Yeah, that's basically what's dominating things. It's been a tough week or two, but
geez, I would think.
Yeah. That is that. How about you? Were you in Vegas this week? Was that this week or last week?
Last week I went and I played a baseball tournament up there, which was fun. We got to the championship game, and then played this team. Every team that goes there, it's like everybody's like an all-star team it's like all the best players from wherever they're from. So like me and two buddies from Kansas City play with this team that's like the best players from Oregon. The team we played in the championship are the best players from Los Angeles, and they're all, like 33 and over. But their pitcher, he was, drafted in the MLB draft. He was, I got a hit off of him, but this is how good these guys were. They beat us 11-1 in the championship game. They were so good that I hit a hard line drive to right, and off the bat, I knew I'm going to have to run really hard or the right fielder's going to throw me out at first. like they were just, they play year round, and it's just mid-season form. So it was really fun. And I didn't seriously injure myself. So that's a major victory.
What's the latest on where the best baseball players in the United States come from? Is it still like Toms River, New Jersey or whatever? Or like what?
Well, sadly, it's a great question. And sadly, it tends to be places like Southern California, Arizona, Florida, Texas. And the reason I say it's sad is because baseball is becoming more like golf or gymnastics or tennis, in that it is, at least for American players, it is mostly a lot of the ones who are making it are like wealthier families, more affluent families who can recognize, oh, my child has a real aptitude for this. I can move into a climate where they can play baseball year round. And so they're moving and sending them to schools like in the South or the Southwest where they can play baseball year round. And that's, why in this last World Series, it was the first time in 50 years that you didn't have a single American-born player of color on the field, which is really a problem. So there are efforts, since you mentioned it, there are efforts like RBI, which is reviving baseball in the inner cities, to really try and revive baseball talent elsewhere, because what's happening a lot is some of the best athletes, they're just like, if they're from colder climates and they don't have the resources, they're just not choosing baseball. They're just choosing a different sport. So anyway, I go off on a whole thing about that, but all right. Well, you can find Ravi and myself on social media, including TikTok, until it's not going to get banned. But anyway, I'm at Jason Kander. He's at Ravi M. Gupta. Please leave a 5-star review. It helps people find out about the show. Thank you to the Meidas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.